I think we've been a little too quick in our recent cultural moment to pigeonhole everything that happens in our nation, in our country, to a race-based issue solely. I think there's a lot of different factors that have played into a lot of the different things that are happening in our world.
Ryan Johnson, Pastor Ryan Johnson on the podcast.
Just dropped it right from the beginning.
Everyone. What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm well. I'm nervous. This is
you're nervous.
I'm nervous. This is
Really?
my first podcast experience, man.
Well, as Julia said in the very first episode, let's pop that podcast cherry.
Wow, I wasn't going to go there, but if Julia said it, I guess it's okay.
I didn't think he would say it either. We actually had to do that take twice, and he still wanted to do it the second time. So, yeah, man. What's been up with you? Anything new? Anything going on?
Yeah, we moved recently, my wife and my family. We moved to a new spot last month, and I just feel like we've been enjoying life since getting unpacked. No boxes left, all that good stuff. So
that's dope.
That's
dope.
good. Yeah.
Talk about your family a little bit. Your wife, 2 kids.
My
what
wife.
You do a little
her
bit.
name is Grace, and she is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
She's an older woman, so she comes with a lot of wisdom and life experience that I didn't have as a young buck. So I'm just kidding. But she's wonderful. She is honestly my best friend, the love of my life, and we have 2 girls, Ellie and Kate. They are 9 and 7. Yes, 9 and 7. She's going to be 8 in May. So yeah, life's good, man.
That's awesome, bro. That's awesome. Well, let's get right into it. We have kind of a few topics that we wanted to go over. First one being the craze, not the craze. That's a terrible way to put it. The kind of movement that's happening right now. And we're slowly coming out of COVID, but something that's kind of being brought to the forefront of like news and social media and all that stuff is this Stop Asian Hate movement.
Yes.
When you hear that and when you see the things that you've seen on social media, what do you think about? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I don't have any social media accounts, so I haven't seen anything on social media. But yeah, I definitely, it's been in the news. I mean, I've read some terrible reports of just people getting randomly attacked in like subways and on the streets. And
yeah, the most recent one being like the salon killing spree. Dude killed 8 people. I think 6 of them were Asian women.
6 were of that descent for sure. And yeah, man, I think it's crazy. I know that our world has had no shortage of crazy things that have been happening in the past year and a half or whatever, but I definitely think, even remembering back to like 9/11 and even stuff with SARS before that, I don't think this is something that's uncommon to times of upheaval and just where fear is pretty widespread in our country. I think that when people get scared and they're frustrated and they have all these different emotional things that are compounding, just crazy stuff comes out. And
yeah, unfortunately,
I think a lot of that emotion and hate and anger and frustration is being directed towards people of Asian descent right now.
Yeah. And we're kind of coming off this Black Lives Matter movement, and it seems like it's looking like it's going to be like a next Black Lives Matter movement where it's the Stop Asian Hate. Can you talk about like the comparisons? What specifically race are you?
I'm half black and half white.
Half black and half white. I don't want to make sure. But you can kind of experience both cultures a little bit, where you being half black and your wife being Korean.
Yeah, Grace is Korean. Yeah,
Korean, and then your kids obviously being a mixture of all that.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the comparisons between the Black Lives Matter movement and social injustice, and then now it seems like something similar is happening with the Asian community?
Yeah, I don't know if. I guess in my mind, and I am not an expert in any of this stuff, but just the way that I see it and the way that I believe, from my worldview as a follower of Jesus, I just feel that they're not entirely separate issues. At least I don't see them as separate. I think that this is kind of with the way that our world seems to be moving right now, especially in our nation. There's just this huge emphasis on race and these different things that are happening almost seems to be hyper focused on racial inequity and all these things that may, I wouldn't say they don't exist. I don't think that you can completely deny it. There's definitely some things that exist in our nation because of our just history and all that stuff. And, definitely people of color have not always had a fair shake in America. And,
Yeah.
that has changed drastically over the last, couple hundred years.
Right.
We've definitely come a long way, but I do think that there has been an unhealthy focus on race in, the last handful of years. And that is kind of contributing to everything. I feel like everything that happens in our country, every major news story, it almost, I feel like people want to squeeze it into this box of it all has to do with somebody's ethnic background, which I don't necessarily believe is the case, at least from my point of view.
Right. Like for me, when I first heard about the salon killing spree thing, it seemed like it was racially motivated, 100%. And that was like the headlines, but then they weren't even clear on it. But it seemed like the news was already going with it. It now, getting all the facts and all the details, it's probably definitely racially motivated. But at first they didn't really know. So it was interesting just seeing how quick news channels are ready to, like, I guess, pull the race card.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, I think it is, like you said, it definitely does seem to be spun that way from the beginning. And some things very well are. I think that, you can't always say that you can't. I think we're too quick to put everything in one box and say like it was completely a race issue or is completely a mental health issue. Like there's all these different factors I think that play into it. It's even, what you kind of mentioned with the salon shootings. I was reading a piece last night where, when cops actually caught the guy, he said that what had nothing to do with race, and it was more of like a motivated by a sexual addiction that he had. And, whether or not that is actually the case. I wouldn't.
Do you know what? I read like only one or two articles on it. Do you know what he meant by that? Because I read that same thing.
I mean, I'm not that individual, so I can only speculate. But
because I don't know what it has to do with shooting up a salon.
I mean, but I think that when you get into the effects that sin has on the human heart, things can be twisted and perverted into all kinds of crazy stuff. And I could definitely see the connect. I mean, even when you look at, secular porn research, the effects that porn has on individuals, one of the things that even, like I said, sexual or secular research-based organizations and scientists have done is it does actually put, especially men, it gives us a propensity towards violence, and especially violence towards women. Like it's not, those two are not disconnected at all.
Yeah. That is interesting. So you kind of talked about how there have been like obvious racial injustices, but you feel like people focus on it too much, the race aspect of it. How do you feel like the times that we're living in affects you and your family being, half black, half
mixed
white?
Race, yeah, for sure.
Mixed race.
I mean, for me, growing up in Southern California, I definitely know that race has never been something that was at the forefront for me and my family as an upbringing. I definitely have been, I don't know, I guess you could say that I've been in a few situations in my life where, I've been profiled because of my skin color, or, people have called me certain names because of the color of my skin and whatnot. But, it was never anything that was, I never saw myself as a victim or was taught to believe that I was anything less than because of what I looked like. So I feel like both of my parents and the people that I grew up with and had an influence on my life, I had a really healthy outlook when it came to that kind of stuff. So my wife and I obviously try to do the same for our girls. And then also being Christians, the race, our ethnic background, our race, that is not where our identity has its end in. I mean, obviously at the end of the day, my identity is in Christ, and that's the way we want to bring our girls up. So
yeah, that's good. That's good. Why do you think racism is still alive in America? and will it ever stop? That's a heavy question.
Yeah, right. Just
that's the
give me
question
the
that
softball question.
people have been asking for a minute now, specifically the last year. Why do you think it's still alive in America, and do you think it will ever stop?
So, yeah, I again, with my worldview and outlook on life, I honestly believe that because of the way that, what scripture teaches about the fact that our world has been broken by sin, and that our God's original intent for his people is not going to be fully realized on this side of eternity. So there's going to be things like fear, hate, racism. There's all these things are going to continue until Jesus comes back.
Right.
I do think that, again, this is my personal opinion. I think that I think we've been a little too quick in our recent cultural moment to pigeonhole everything that happens in our nation, in our country, to a race-based issue solely. I think there's a lot of different factors that have played into a lot of the different things that are happening in our world. And yeah, man, I wish that I could answer that question in a more positive light, but I don't think it's ever going to be something we're totally free of.
Right.
But I also don't think it has to be something that we have this hyper focus on all the time.
I agree with that. I think there's definitely stuff that we can do to help it, but I think it's always still going to be kind of alive, unfortunately, just because, like you talked about sin, just because sin is always going to be there. So I think racism is a part of that sin.
And I mean, at the end of the day, people are scared of what they don't understand. So I think that's one of the beautiful things about following Jesus, is that he not only, because we're united in him as followers of Jesus, we get the opportunity to be in community with people that don't look like us, don't have the same background as us, but it all works because we have the same center, and we get to learn from each other, and it's a beautiful thing, man. So
yeah,
I know that even growing up at the church that I go to and have been a part of, like, we're so diverse, and I don't want to do life any other way.
right. I was even talking to Micah a little bit about that same idea, where because our foundation is in the same place in Jesus Christ, we're able to have conversations, and we're still able to have differences and opinions and all that stuff. But if we're Christian and we love Christ, we still should be able to love each other, understand each other, be
absolutely.
open in dialogue,
Yep.
and learn new things. But I feel like the world is at a place right now where it's hard to have dialogue without being judged or even canceled for the opinions that we have.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's unfortunate. But I think that, in my humble opinion, I think that if, as Christians, if we show the world what it looks like to do things the right way, then things will start to change.
that's good, bro. That's good. Talking a lot about Christianity, sin, all that stuff. You are a specifically youth pastor. Tell me a little bit about that, what that looks like weekly nowadays.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're pretty fortunate to be in a place where we're having in-person services again and all that stuff. But, the last year has been rough, man. It's been, not specifically for my family, but as a youth pastor and having this heart and this passion to see young people just be healthy, mind, soul, and body. Like, it's been hard not to, one, be there for them physically as we would like to be, and then to know that they're going through things, but we can only reach out through like social media and stuff like that, and just trying to get really creative in the last year to do what we can to still be there for our students. And it's been tough, but it's getting better.
I'm sure the ministry, I know the ministry has changed a little bit, where you reach out to the kids, communicate, and even have services, which is crazy. Kind of backtrack a little bit. Why did you choose to be a youth? You and your wife both
we are
leading the youth. So why did you guys choose to be?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with just the call that I feel like God's put on my life. Definitely have, probably since I was about midway through high school, I've felt this pull in the sense that ministry was just something that I was supposed to do with my life. And I kind of felt this draw towards youth from a young age. I grew up in church, but I hated going until I was in middle school, because there was a leader in our youth group who just would not leave me alone. He kind of forced his way into my life, and but it was the very first time that I had met another adult that actually I felt cared about me in a real legitimate way, and through him I was able to understand God's love a little bit more, and then kind of just fell in headfirst from there. And after I graduated high school, I knew that I wanted to be able to give back to another young person the way that person had done for me.
Yeah, I feel that. That's definitely, I have a very similar strong feeling with that, to where I made a real connection when I was in my junior year in high school with some of the leaders and stuff, and made me feel like I belonged, and like my first real sense of community, and making the same thing, making people feeling like people cared about me.
Yeah.
So that's cool. What is like the main thing? How long have you been leading them? Like 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, it'll be a little over 4 years now.
4. Okay.
Yeah.
What's like the main thing that you feel like you've learned through the last 4-ish years?
Gosh.
Or it could be a couple things.
Yeah. I think if I could boil it down to just a few things, I've really come to understand the love that God has for us in kind of a new light. And the Bible talks a lot about this concept of steadfastness and long suffering and the faithfulness of God. And you can read, I read these things my entire life growing up, the fact that God's love never ends, and he'll never give up on us, and he's always there for us. And it can just kind of seem like lip service after a while, or it just becomes so familiar, like the weight of those words really falls off. But just journeying with students and seeing them go through their own junk in life, and really developing a burden within myself to love them the way that God loves them. I just really have begun to understand a lot better, in a more clear sense, like how the weight of God's love for us and what that actually means for our lives. And
kind of gives you a God perspective.
Oh, absolutely, man. Like the fact that he will, like in my own junk, and no matter how far I get or how much I wander astray from him, he's never ever going to give up on me. And that, like, being able to be in a place where I try to do that for young people on a consistent basis is really showed me what God's love looks like in my own life, and helped me just love people better. So
that's amazing. Yeah, I feel like, and talking about that, one of the questions that I wrote down for you was, having experienced like the various conversations with different kids, obviously talking to them weekly, they're going through a lot of stuff. What is something you think parents should know when it comes to helping their teenage children? And I'm talking about like specifically Christian parents.
Yeah, that's a great question. Because parents come to us a lot.
Right.
Thinking that, with their various concerns, questions, and, I think that sometimes they expect us to have all the answers, and we don't have all the answers. I feel like we have next to no answers sometimes, but I think the biggest thing that parents can do for their kids is just to be honest with them about their own journey through life, and especially when it comes to faith. I think a lot of young people that we run into that have issues with their parents, and there's a lot of just strife and contention. It's the parents have come to this place where they're ready to serve God and to follow him, and they want their whole family to do that, which is awesome. But I think that they also don't want to talk about their past with their students sometimes. And I totally get that as a parent. It's hard to bring that stuff up and to, tell your kids all the junk that you went through.
Right.
And I can only imagine what that's like on a teenage level, because my girls are still young. But I know from talking to students and just trying to walk with them through their stuff, like, I think they just want to know that their parents are real people, and to understand that they've had the same struggles, or they just want a little bit of like understanding and common ground to stand on sometimes. So I think the more honest parents can be with their students, the better the outcome is.
Right. I feel like communication is lacking in the home.
Yeah.
even when I was growing up, and it wasn't as, crazy. Everyone has a phone in their hand. When I was in the 6th grade, or 7th grade, or even 8th grade, I probably started using my phone more in like high school. But, yeah, I've definitely experienced that lack of communication as I got older, not finding things out, like even like recently, where it's just like, oh, I'm not going to say this, but because yeah, it's kind of personal. But just finding things out that you didn't know, and you're like, oh, I didn't know my mom went through that.
Yeah.
And it's crazy, because I wish I knew. I would understand my family better, like my mom, my dad, everyone, and even finding things out about my grandparents and, the stuff that they went through. And I'm just like, bro, I'm 23, I'm 24. How am I barely knowing this now?
Right.
But I feel like they do that to protect us in a way.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. I'd rather you go ahead. Say what you're going to say.
No, I agree with you 100%. I think, having my own kids, I would do anything to protect them. And I think that, and that's one thing that I think students don't always understand, which we also try to help them understand, is that they see their parents as tyrants almost sometimes, like they just want things done their way, and they have no room for discussion, all that stuff. But what they don't understand is that your mom, your dad, grandpa, whoever you live with, like, their job in life is to look out for you, and they would literally die for you. And I think that there's a disconnect with that sometimes, where they don't see it as this protection and this love. And, sometimes it's definitely not always expressed in the right way, but I know 99.9% of adults or family members or whatever you want to call them, like, their interest in the student is love, and they're just trying to do it the best that they know how. So,
yeah. Do you feel like parents can be sometimes like afraid to communicate when they're children?
Yes, I'm afraid to communicate with. Are you kidding me? Like, kids are so different nowadays, and like young people they're awesome, and they have so much life and energy. But I think that when you get past a certain stage in life, you forget what that was like, and then compounded with the fact that each generation has its own nuances, it can be very intimidating and challenging to reach out and to communicate and find that common ground, because you staring at them and looking at it from the outside, you think, I don't understand you at all.
Yeah. How do you think parents can find that common ground within their household with their children, that sort of thing?
I think it's different based on every family.
Okay.
But I think the general aspect, or the most general piece of advice that I could give, is just to ask questions. Ask really good questions of your student, your young person, your kid, whatever. I think that one way you actually show genuine interest in people is by asking them about themselves, their thoughts, their feelings, their outlook on life, all that stuff. And that's what I try to do when I meet kids for the first time at a youth service. Just ask tons of questions. I feel like that breaks down the walls. It lets them know that you're interested in their life, and being okay with the fact that they don't see things the way that you do at this stage in life.
Yeah.
And trying to have a really good poker face when they tell you things that just throw you for a loop.
Right. Definitely. I feel that. Sweet, man. I think that was a good conversation.
Yeah. That was like a lot faster than I thought it was going to be.
The 30 minutes goes by fast.
It does. It goes by really
ours
fast.
is only in 25, but still went by pretty fast. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up, or?
No, man. I'm still soaking in the vibe.
We popped that podcast cherry, baby.
I mean, you made me coffee. You did all. It was nice.
Yeah,
I feel tender and cared for. So
I'm glad you do.
Yeah.
Ryan Johnson on the podcast, first time ever.
Yeah.
We'll get him back on here pretty soon. Is there anywhere? You don't have any social media?
I don't. I'm off the grid, man. It's nice.
Follow CCX Youth, I guess. That's the ministry he pastors. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. If you're on YouTube, make sure you subscribe, like, comment if you have any questions down below.
Medina Mania is the real thing, people.
It's a real thing.
That article really changes it. I said it's the real thing. I was trying to give you a little more credit than you gave yourself. You said it's a real thing. A water bottle's a real thing too.
Yeah. So is Jesus. Repent of your sin. Sorry. Bye. That ended kind of COVID fist bump. We forgot.
How do I do this?
You just fist bump.
Oh, okay.
Bye.
It's a regular fist bump.
Yeah.